Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 727, 727, March 20th, 2019, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we got a lot to cover here today. Let's get started. First, we'll talk about a couple things that are not so important, really, but worth talking about. And then we'll get to the good stuff here toward the end, from the middle to the end. Okay, let's get this out of the way. First of all, Trump was up in Ohio today, well north of me. I'm in southern Ohio. He was up in northern Ohio. So he's up in Ohio today, and he's giving a speech, and he's basically telling the audience why that he never liked Senator Magoo. He says, I never liked McCain very much. And he says that McCain gave the dossier to the FBI instead of giving it to him or giving him a call, which he says put him in jeopardy. And that's certainly one reason why he did not like McCain. And of course, he also brought up the vote on repealing Obamacare. Now, this is part of this continuing, back and forth between he and Meghan McCain. So, the fact of the matter is, Senator Magoo participated in a coup against the president. He gets this phony dossier, and what he should have done is gone to Trump personally and said, hey, I got this dossier and it's making a lot of claims about people in your campaign and stuff like that. I mean, this is some pretty bad stuff or whatever. That's what you would normally have done. But what he did is what he actually did was went behind Trump's back and gave it to Comey. It's also suspected that he gave it to Brennan. Then he sent his right-hand man to go pass it off to BuzzFeed and 14 other media organizations. His right-hand man also went over to Ukraine and was participating with getting information and feeding information back and forth with the Ukrainian government, involved in the same propaganda organization as was this Alexandra Chalupa, the DNC operative. The bottom line is that Senator Magoo participated in a nasty exercise of a deep state coup against his president. He never attempted to verify this information or anything else. He just took it and started passing it all over. He used his lackey, David Kramer, to do the dirty work, but Senator Magoo was driving this train. Now, obviously, I understand that Meghan Magoo is defending her father. That's just fine. But the fact of the matter is, you cannot defend what her father did here. And when this story is finally written and the history is there, it's going to prove that Senator Magoo was involved in a deep state coup against a president of his own party. That's what he's going to be known for and remembered for. That's going to be his legacy, that he was a traitor. A traitor. Trump has every right to respond to what Magoo did. And for these people saying, "Oh, that's just horrible," Trump talking about McCain. What if Senator Magoo would have tried to take them out in a coup? Do you think they'd have the same opinion? Don't they remember the vote he cast on Obamacare? And don't they remember that he was the one who had his man Henry Kerner, I believe his name was, leading the charge to destroy Tea Party activist groups who were supporting Republicans, but they didn't like Senator Magoo, and he didn't like them. This guy, and this is just what we know about this guy. This is why all his so-called friends in the Navy nicknamed him McNasty. Senator Magoo was an asshole, plain and simple. He's also a traitor. And that's what the history books are going to reflect. And when everything comes out, we're going to know, everyone's going to know that Senator Magoo was instrumental in the plot to take out Trump. Period. Everyone's going to know it. Most of us already do. And those who don't will before this is all over. Trump has every right to call out Magoo for what he did. Now, yesterday, Trump was also calling out Kellyanne Conway's husband, George, for the comments he made. And he has every right to do that. I mean, if you're going to throw from the peanut section, you're going to be throwing comments like this against the President of the United States, saying he's mentally ill, that he's got, he's a narcissist and all these sorts of things. Yes, somebody needs to fight back. Typically, it's people who are around the president. But unfortunately, this president doesn't have anybody like that. So he has to do it for himself. And he does a damn good job. He's not going to sit back and take it. And if you think he is, just go ahead and launch an attack on him and watch what happens. This dude defends himself. And if he didn't, no one would. So I applaud Trump. Yes, he should go after Magoo. Every time Megan Magoo opens her mouth and makes a comment about Trump, Trump should hit Senator Magoo. He has every right to do it. And if Kellyanne Conway's husband wants to make those comments, he should hit him back too. Now, Kellyanne was on a radio program, and on this radio program, she was asked about this, and she defended Trump. She said, well, my husband, she's like, Trump could, this is causing a lot of problems for Trump, and, he could fire me. He could move me out because of the controversy here. But he hasn't done that, nor has he suggested I should leave or anything else. Trump's sticking up for me. It's my husband that's creating the problems. So there she is defending Trump, and rightly so. You got to wonder what kind of a guy this is. I mean, why would you publicly say derogatory things about your spouse's boss, knowing good and well your wife has to go to work for this boss, and you're out there making these comments? Who would do that to their wife? I mean, this guy's a real slimeball. Really is. I can only assume he's jealous. He's jealous because Kellyanne has got this high-profile job, and he does not. I believe he wanted a job in the Trump administration and didn't get one. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I can tell you this, I'm pretty sure that old George is sleeping on the couch these days. I'm pretty sure the Conway house is not a very happy place. And my guess is, she could do a lot better than him. Quite honestly, take a look at him. It's like he definitely is married up. Let's put it that way. Now, my guess is that she would divorce him, and she might even do that at some point. She might just get sick of him. But I understand they've been married for 18 years. They got 4 kids, including a couple of very young kids. So she probably doesn't want to disrupt the family. So she'll probably try to tolerate him. But my guess is he's sleeping on the couch. And rightly so. The guy's an a-hole. Period. And I hope Trump keeps hitting him. It's the way it works. Well, of course, yesterday we talked on the video about Mark Meadows being on Sean Hannity and discussing the fact that there are ambassadors, people who are ambassadors who were compromised in the Spygate coup attempt. And, of course, that's got everybody wondering, who the hell is he talking about? Well, we just found out who one of those people are. Now, this person isn't a ambassador yet, but she was nominated to be the ambassador. Had not been confirmed yet. Now, Trump has pulled or withdrawn her nomination. Her name, Kathleen Kavalec, Kavalec. She was up for U.S. ambassador to Albania. Now, Kavalec, it appears, communicated with Chrissy Steele, and she supplied info to the Department of Justice, including to Bruce Ohr, before and after the 2016 election. And she is formerly from the State Department. She might even still be at the State Department. I don't know. But she also met with Chrissy Steele in person to exchange Trump-Russia information. How in the world does someone like this get a nomination to be an ambassador in his administration? Who is it that decided that would be a good person to nominate when they've probably known this information? Trump is surrounded by enemies. Who are putting these enemies around him? How is this happening? Trump needs to tell Mulvaney to hire a special assistant and to go find out who is anti-Trump, who's working against him, and to get rid of all these people. Any way you have to do it. And it's just unbelievable. So here's another person now of interest, and another person that was getting, obviously, dossier information and false Trump-Russia information given to them a DOJ official who was obviously passing it through the chain. I mean, this dossier was being passed by so many different people through so many different chains, through the FBI, through the State Department, to the Department of Justice. My God. And Halper came out of the DOD. 6-agency task force. It's time to look into that 6-agency task force, where you will probably find all these players connected to it. And Mark Meadows didn't use the word ambassador, he used the word ambassadors, meaning that there's more than one of these types of people. And he says that this information, these names are going to come out. Every damn one of these people who participated, knowingly participated in this exercise, should absolutely be charged with federal crimes and sent to jail and fined. They were all part of the coup. Now, let's go back to New Zealand. So this Prime Minister of New Zealand, not only is she encouraging people to turn in their guns, she's now urging non-Muslim women in New Zealand to wear hijabs. And they are going to broadcast Muslim prayers on Friday in New Zealand. Oh, man. Oh, man. You gotta wonder. You gotta wonder what in the hell's going on in this world. What are people thinking, man? Well, here's one that won't surprise anybody. Chuck the Cuck Schumer is going to reintroduce the bill to rename the Russell Senate building after Senator Magoo. Now, the Russell building was named after a very popular, well-known, well-liked senator named Senator Russell. He apparently was very widely respected. Now, the first time that Chuck the Cuck tried to pull this move, there was no interest, because a lot of people there, quite honestly, really don't like Senator Magoo in the Senate building there. And they also know the reputation and the history of this Mr. Russell, who the building was named for. And they're probably looking at Mr. Russell and say, well, wait a minute, this guy Russell was a pretty good guy. You're wanting to take his name off the building and replace it with a traitor who participated in a coup against a president of his own party, who launched, or participant, certainly, his right-hand man launched was the ones who launched the targeting scandal, targeting of Tea Party groups under the IRS. Lois Lerner. That was Mr. Kerner, who was on the staff of Senator Magoo. Magoo was pushing Kerner to push Lois Lerner to attack and investigate these Tea Party groups to put them out of business. I am thinking this is not going to go anywhere. Schumer is only doing this just to be a pain in Trump's ass, and Trump doesn't care. This is all Chuck's got. It's all he's got. And he couldn't get it done the first time around. What makes him think he's going to get it done now, after the recent revelations, giving further evidence of Senator Magoo's role in the plot to take down the president? Not exactly the type of guy you want to name a building after, is it? Maybe name a jail after him, because that's where he should have been. Hopefully, his conspirators, the people who conspired with him, will be. Senator Magoo was a traitor. Period. Ted Koppel, who is by no means a Trump supporter and by no means a Republican, a conservative, or anything else. Ted Koppel is liberal as they come. But Ted Koppel is a journalist, was a pretty good journalist, and he was on a show the other day, and this is not the first time he said this. He was on a show yesterday, and he said that Trump is right, that the liberal media is out to get him. And he described the difference between a journalist and a hack. And he's basically said, you know, I was a journalist for 30 years, more than 30 years. I always tried to be a journalist. Tried to keep my personal political biases out of my reporting. And I think he did a pretty good job. I saw some bias with Koppel from time to time, but for the most part, you know, you could do a lot worse than Koppel. And he's absolutely correct to point out exactly what is true, what everybody can see, which is that the media today has gone completely off the rails. They're not journalists. They are unhinged. And they basically are out to get Trump. And Koppel is right that Trump is right. They certainly are out to get him. And Koppel is embarrassed. He's embarrassed because he's sort of, you know, part of them. You know, at least once was. So, yes, Ted Koppel calling out the right, or calling out the left, for the left-wing media, so-called journalists, for their Trump derangement syndrome. They just can't help themselves. And he'll probably take a lot of heat for it, but he probably doesn't care. Well, this is more revelations from the Steele depositions. So now we're learning that Christopher Steele was allowed to view sealed, classified documents, and he was provided both the Glenn Simpson, and Ken Benzinger sealed testimonies for his review. So in addition to everything else, this fraud was given access to classified, sealed documents. Foreign British former spy working for the Right Reverend Clinton, doing opposition research, running a smear campaign, somehow being paid by the FBI and by the Right Reverend Clinton, and probably by the British government as well, is given access to sealed, classified documents, which members of Congress were not allowed to see. Members of Congress tried to get these things, tried to get them released, tried to get Rodenstein to come off the documents. Nope, sorry, even though they have oversight. No, can't do that. It will interfere with Uncle Bob's investigation. But they have no problem allowing Christopher Steele, a foreign national, who's basically part of a smear campaign. They'll allow him to look at these classified documents. No problem. Just unbelievable. Ben Rhodes. Ben Rhodes is now defying a court order to testify under oath in a case brought by Judicial Watch. In a lot of ways, I don't blame Ben Rhodes because, quite honestly, he's a very guilty man. But that judge in this particular case just gave a tongue lashing to the attorneys representing the State Department. And I imagine he's not going to be very, humored by this. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ben Rhodes get hit with some sort of contempt by this judge. Because this judge is, I think, tired of fooling around with these people. They lied to him too, by the way. Which is why he was so angry. And the last, they were supposed to produce documents, and they didn't produce the documents. There's another case that he's presiding over where they were supposed to produce documents on Peter's been stroking us. He's given them a tongue lashing again about that and told them that they didn't do that well enough and they need to go back and try again. So, I mean, this judge is definitely probably not the judge that you want to play around with, but Ben Rhodes defying a court order to testify under oath in a case brought by Judicial Watch. We'll see how that goes. We have Jeff Carlson with an article today in the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times. And I'll just go through some of the bullet points of the article from Jeff Carlson today. So here we go. And this article deals with the testimonies of Bruce and Nellie Ohr. Nellie Ohr provided husband Bruce with Russia research. It's not something that either of them have admitted to up until now. Nellie did seek out the job at Confusion GPS. not the other way around. Now, this came out about a week ago. It was suspected that this was the case. But now, Jeff Carlson, and you can read he provides the email that you can read, or the email that you can actually see, or the testimony where you can actually see Nellie Ohr admitting when she's asked under oath about how she came to work at Fusion GPS. And she says she went to Fusion GPS. They didn't come to her. She had been working for the CIA, obviously, before that, which draws further evidence, I guess you could say, that it's very likely that Nellie Ohr was working for the CIA, Mr. Potato Head, and he's the one who motivated her to go to Confusion GPS and to get a job at Confusion GPS. That way she's still working for the CIA, but now she's CIA on the inside working at Confusion GPS, where she can assist Mr. Potato Head in producing the phony dossier, which she was the co-author of. Glenn Simpson wrote it. He and his wife, Nellie, and Mr. Baumgartner contributed to the so-called Steele dossier. Nellie and Bruce both testified that they had minimal contact with each other about their work. But newly released emails show that Nellie emailed Bruce dozens of times about Russia-related topics between October 2015 and September 2016. Nellie also included others in the DOJ in that email chain. Those email chains, I should say. Both Bruce and Nellie were in contact with Glenn Simpson. Of course, we know that. Nellie also gave Bruce Ohr a memory stick, which had apparently a dossier or the dossier on it. Nellie Ohr was hired 8 months before Steele. Yes, she was working for Confusion GPS back in the fall of 2015 when those illegal 702 queries were being done. Nellie, Bruce, and Glenn Simpson have all worked for the CIA. Nellie also emailed a DOJ official named Lisa Holtine, Holtyn, Holtine. She was a senior intelligence official in the DOJ. Nellie Ohr was including her on a lot of them emails too. So here is another person within the DOJ. Unbelievable how many people were being, this dossier and the Trump-Russia stuff was being pumped into. I mean, it's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Bruce and Nellie met with Christopher Steele in Washington, D.C. on October the 30th of 2016. I'm sorry, July the 30th of 2016. It's a very important date. Why? Because it was the following day, July 31st, that they opened up Operation Crossfire Hurricane, and that Peter Van Strokenes and Priestep and Lisa Page and several others took that little trip to London. My oh my. As this thing continues to unravel, it's going to be unbelievable when we get to the bottom of this to see the level of corruption and the massive amount of corruption that was just... The fact that this stuff was being pumped into the State Department, the DOD, the CIA, the FBI, media organizations. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, it was coming from every direction. Every direction. One American News is saying that William Barr wants Rodenstein around until he fully understands what happened with Carter Page FISA and the Woods process. Apparently, Burr has asked Rodenstein to write a report on what he did involving the FISA and also in what he knows about what they did to be compliant with the Woods procedure. Barr is conducting his own internal investigation, according to OAN, into the FISA and the dossier. So that's another theory that's being pushed out there, and it may just be that until Uncle Bob's report is actually out, maybe he just wants Rodenstein there, because he already has his deputy in there, but he's having Rodenstein stick around. So there's some reason for it. I don't claim to know what it is, but a lot of people are throwing out opinions. I prefer just to sit back and wait and see exactly what the reason was for it, because I'm sure we'll learn at some point. Fox News is reporting that Greg Craig, a name we've heard many times before, he was a former Obama White House counsel and a Clinton-linked attorney. We're hearing what we heard many months ago, that he will be charged by Uncle Bob the Executioner for being an unregistered overseas lobbyist, right along with Podesta and all the rest. But Martha McCallum of Fox is saying that he is going to be charged. Greg Craig is going to be charged by Mueller for being an unregistered overseas lobbyist. Okay, we'll see how that works out, and if there's anybody else, such as like a Podesta. Something tells me there won't be, and I'll believe this when I see it. Maybe Uncle Bob thinks he needs to indict a Democrat or two to try to save face. Who knows? We'll see if that actually happens, because I don't know that it will. Maybe. And yeah, we talked about him a while back. Doing the same thing Manafort was doing, with the exact same people that Manafort was doing it with. He was also representing Mr. Yanukovych, as was Tony Podesta. Manafort was working the Republican side of the aisle, and Podesta and this a-hole were working the Democrat side of the aisle. Should also be noted that, in addition to other things that Bruce and Nellie were up to, they were hosting lots of people for dinners and things at their home, foreign officials with connections to the intelligence community and state departments and the EU and various other things. And there's a list of some of these people that the Ohrs entertained, and they have deep state backgrounds. They also guest hosted the Queen's Head Lady from something called the Privy, Privy Council. Her name was Sanders. So some woman named Sanders, who was some sort of a person that works for the Queen, I assume we're talking about England, was entertained by the Ohrs at their home for dinner, in addition to a lot of other deep state players from Europe who are involved in intelligence and state departments and various things and such. My oh my. Now, for many of you who watch my videos, you know that from very early on, very, very early on, in my TowerGate videos, I said that this whole thing looks like a Hillary Clinton operation. A rotten Reverend Clinton operation. So, I believe that this is going to, eventually, we're going to learn this, and then everyone will be talking about it, but I've been talking about it for a very long time, and I have various reasons why I believe this. I think one of the best reasons I have for this is the Shearer dossier. Cody Shearer, who's a henchman for the rotten Reverend Clinton, puts together his own dossier, which is strikingly similar to the so-called Steele dossier. Gives it to another Clinton henchman, Sidney Blumenthal, who then passes it on to Christopher Steele, who then turns around and gives it to the FBI. Why didn't Cody Shearer just give it to the FBI? Why didn't Blumenthal just give it to the FBI? Why didn't Cody Shearer just give it to Hillary and let her give it to the FBI? Because if you notice, every one of these dossiers and all this Trump-Russia garbage, every bit of it went through various people. It always went through various people. Clinton hires Perkins Coie to hire Confusion GPS, who hires Christopher Steele. Cody Shearer writes his dossier, gives it to Blumenthal, who gives it to Steele, who gives it back to the FBI. We have Steele passing the dossier on to media people, passing it on to the FBI, passing it on to people in the State Department, passing it on to various FBI agents, his buddy over there in Italy, FBI agent Mr. Gaeta. There's a common thread about the way that this all went down and the way this false information was being moved. It always used multiple intermediaries and strawmen. In every case, it's the same MO, the same method of operation. That tells me there was one person that was probably guiding all this, directing all this, almost like a movie director. And I think that one person was the rotten Reverend Clinton. How is it possible that Cody Shearer would write a dossier that has almost the same information that's in the so-called Steele dossier, when in fact, Steele's in London? Shearer's not in London, he's in the States. No one could verify anything in the dossier. No one. So how is it possible that Shearer could come up with the same information if nearly every journalist on the planet, the FBI, the CIA, British MI6, British intelligence, private contractors, hundreds and thousands of everybody else on the planet trying to confirm the dossier, no one can do it, but somehow Shearer comes up with almost the identical information? Doesn't make sense, does it? The only thing that would make sense, or make it make sense, is if they were getting their stuff from the same source. The same source. And who would be the person? I mean, does Shearer know Steele? Apparently not, because he had to use two intermediaries to get it to Steele. Who is the one person that's connected to everybody and everything in this entire plot? The rotten Reverend Clinton. Who would have the ability to move this dossier into the State Department, into the DOD, into the CIA, into the FBI, to the media? Who would have had this kind of connection, these types of connections to be able to make all this stuff happen? Cody Shearer? I don't think so. Blumenthal? I don't think so. Simpson couldn't do it because he was working for the rotten Reverend, although he was doing it anyway. Just like the lawyer from Perkins Coie, Mr. Sussman, he really couldn't do it, but he did it anyway. My friends, when we get to the bottom of this, we're going to find the rotten Reverend Clinton was the ringleader. She was running the program. This is a Hillary Clinton operation. How about Alexander Downhatch Downer? He was a Clinton supporter. He signed over $25 million of Aussie taxpayer money to the Clinton Foundation. Was a close friend of Slick Willie when they both were at Oxford together. And so here you have Downer, who's a close friend of the Clintons and a supporter. He goes and tells the FBI that the Russians have dirt on Hillary, based on a conversation he had with the Trump advisor, Papadopoulos, who denies that the conversation happened. The FBI opens their investigation based on that, according to them. And of course, this lawyer, Sussman, he walks right into the general counsel of the FBI and gives him a thumb drive and some other documents, and then tells him about this server at Trump Tower. Who's he working for? Hillary Clinton. Everybody was working for Hillary Clinton. She was running this damn show. She was the one flipping the switches, turning the dials, organizing it, directing it, controlling it, managing it. She planned, she organized, she directed, she controlled this entire operation. I believe that's what we're going to find to be true when we get to the bottom of this thing. I've been saying it for almost 2 years now. I'll continue to say it. It was a rotten Reverend Clinton operation. Totally. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Have a good night. Goodbye.